And
Oh,
recording.
it's solid. It's solid. It's solid. If one separated truma from produce before the conclusion of work on it, Eliezer forbids to eat of it a chance meal, and eat of it a chance meal. But the common permit except from a large basket of figs. If one separated truma from a large basket of figs, then Shimon permits, but the common forbid. If one says to his fellow, "Here is the Isser, and give me for it 5 figs," he may not eat before tithing them. That says Reb Meir. Rabbi Yehuda says if he eats one by one, he's exempt, but if together, he is liable. Rabbi Yehuda said it once happened in a rose garden in Yerushalayim that there 3 or 4 pigs were being sold for an Isser, and Truma and Maasros were never separated from them. If one says to his fellow, "Here is the issue for 10 figs, which I shall select," he may select and eat them. For a cluster of grapes that I shall select, he may pick the grapes and eat them. For a pomegranate that I shall select, he may pick the seeds and eat them. For a melon that I select, he may cut slices and eat. But if he said to him, "For these 20 figs, for these 2 clusters of grapes, or for these 2 pomegranates, or for these 2 melons," he may eat them in his usual manner, and he is exempt because he brought them while they were still attached to the ground. Okay.
Yeah. Socher is a poil. So here, as we've learned in other places, I think probably in one of the Babas, um, that a worker is entitled to eat min Torah. That's if he's working with harvesting figs, he's allowed to eat figs. And that's an entitlement from the Torah, and he doesn't. That's nothing that he's going to be so even if he negotiates, if he's unaware that he has the right to this, that doesn't take away from the fact that it's given to him by the Torah. So hasocher es hapoel liktosim or b'tainim. So he hires a worker to work with him in the figs. Amar lo, and the worker says to him, Al manas she'ochel tainim, on condition that I can eat figs. And the owner says, "Well, I mean, yeah, okay," because in any case, the Torah said fine. So yeah, yeah. So the owner says, I can, take this to my advantage. He thinks I'm doing him a favor, but really, it's been a Torah. So he says, yeah, yeah, that's fine. You can eat figs.
Yeah.
So now the question is he if he takes the figs and to eat them, is that part of the transaction? And does he need to take Trumas and Masters before he eats? Answer says the Mishnah, Ochelu Pater. The agreement is null and void because he was already entitled minatora. Almanah because he was already entitled minatora. This is not considered a transaction. Okay. Almanah she'ochal ani ubani. Or another Nusach of the Mishnah says Ani ubeiti, ubnei beiti, me and my son or me and my household members. Doesn't matter. The important thing is that he's making a stipulation that both he and somebody else can eat as part of his wages. So if they agree to that, or sheyochal b'ni b'schari, or my son should be able to eat instead of you paying me, let him eat to the value of whatever you would be paying me. Hu ochel patur, so the worker himself is allowed to eat without taking trumas and masros, but no ochel b'chayav. But his son has to take trumas and masros because what he's taking is part of a payment, and it's a
Uh-huh.
it's a
Okay.
transaction, and therefore immediately the transaction is koveya for trumas and masros. Al manas she'ochal b'shas hakatzia ula achar hakatzia. He says, I want to work. I'll work for you, but on condition that I can eat both during the harvest and after the harvest. Okay, b'shas hakatzia ochel pater. So while he's busy working with the food, then he eats min Torah and therefore he's pater. Ochel pater ula achar hakatzia ochel chayev. But what he eats afterwards is chayev and chumas and masros because now this is transactional. She'eino ochel min Torah, because there his entitlement does not come from the Torah. Zeh your general rule is ha'ochel min Torah pater v'she'eino ochel min Torah chayiv. If the Torah entitles you to eat, then he does not need to take trumas and rashes while he's eating. But if he does not have such an entitlement, then he's chayiv because now this is transactional. Okay. Mishna ches haya ose ba levasim. So he's working in the levasim, which is one kind of figs. These are they're lower quality figs. Levasim are the lower quality. Lo yochal bivnos sheva. He's not allowed to eat from the higher quality figs. Okay, bivnos sheva lo yochal min balabasim, and the same goes the other way. If he's working with a high quality figs, he's not allowed to pick from the low quality figs. Aval monehu esatzmo. However, if he knows he's going to be eating, he's going to be working in both, he can build up an appetite. Right? He can start. He can not eat while he's working with the inferior quality. And then he gets to the high quality stuff, and then he can eat. Okay, and he'll obviously be eating more then. Hamachlif im chavero. What happens if he's swapping with his friend? Let's say he's working with ze lechol v'ze lechol, ze liktos v'ze liktos. So whether he's if he's working in the figs and his friend is working in the grapes, and he says, "Listen, let me swap with you." So he's entitled to take figs while he's working. So now he wants to swap with his friend who's working in the next door vineyard, and that immediately is transactional, right? You're doing a barter with fruit. Chayev. It doesn't matter what he whether it's to eat or to dry or whatever. It's all this is considered transactional, and the fruit is immediately chayev in Chumas and Maasros. Rabbi Yehuda Omer hamachlif le'echol chayev v'liktos patur. He says if you're swapping to eat, then you're chayev, but if it's liktos, then the malacha isn't finished. So therefore, you'd be pater. So I just want to read in the commentary because Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is actually consequential over here because this is actually la halacha.
Hmm.
This is one of those rare cases where we paskin like the das yachid. Okay, so what does he say? Machlif le'echol. If he swaps food to eat, he's chayav to be maaser. But if he does it liktos, if he's switching them to in order to dry them, right? Liktos is to put them out to dry. Patur. He doesn't have to take maaser. She'ena mekach kover l'maaser b'davar shedayin lo nigmar melachto because it's not kover for maaser with something that with the malacha isn't yet finished, and therefore he is still allowed to eat from them casually. However, the Tanakama holds that the transaction itself is kover for maaser, whether you finish the malacha or whether you haven't finished the malacha. Okay, but as I said, the halacha is going to follow Rabbi Yehuda in this case.
Hmm.
All right, Gimel Aleph. Ma'avir teinim b'chatzer liktos. Now, so just to remind you, a person's own chatzer is kover for maaser. So as soon as he comes in from the field and comes into his own chatzer, straight away it's kavua. Okay, but what happens now if his intention is to lay them out to dry? He's just going through his courtyard in order to put them on a drying mat. So it's not yet kamar malacha. Okay. Now, for he himself, so he's transporting the figs through his chatzer. So his kids can run out and grab some figs from daddy. Okay. And they can eat without taking chumas and maasros because the malacha has not yet been fixed, and he's just transporting. The fact that it's coming to the chatzer is just as a path, but uh, but he himself is not allowed to eat, and that is actually just that's a gezerah that he shouldn't because that he shouldn't it shouldn't appear. Wait, let me just see why he is. There was a commentary on this. Don't get this right. Right. If the balabais eats from these figs, it's like he's changed his mind. He's changed his mind now not to. So it's not a gezerah. It's actually it's technically it's technically gemar malacha because he owns the figs. As soon as he decides that he's going to eat them now in his chatzer, as opposed to drying them, he's already changed this now to a gemar malacha, and he's in his chatzer. So the chatzer now is already kover. But for the children, they're just taking from figs that were meant to be dried. Yeah, po'alim she'imo, but the workers who are with him, bisman she'ein lahem alav mezonos. So the workers who do not have the right to eat, it depends on what their contract is. So if the contract is that he says I'm going to feed you, then there's one halacha, and if he doesn't have any stipulation about that he has to feed them, that's a different halacha. So if he never stipulated with them that he has to feed them, then they too ochlim and puturim, and they can also come and eat from casually from these figs because he's just giving them to him as a gift, and that's allowed. Aval im yesh lahem alav mezonos. If, however, they're entitled to eat from him, harei elu lo yochelu, they're not allowed to eat because for them it would be transactional. This food is magia to them, and therefore they would have to take trumas and masters before they can eat. Okay, back
All
to
right.
trumas. Yud aleph aleph.
Sure. Okay, you'd olive. One may not put fig cake or dried figs into fish brine because he spoils them, but one may put wine into brine. One may not perfume oil, but he may make that wine into honeyed wine. One may not boil truma wine because he diminishes it, and Reb Yehuda permits it because he improves it. Date honey, apple wine, and winter grape vinegar, and all other fruit choices of truma. Reb Eliezer declares them liable to the value and the added fifths, but Reb Yeshua exempts. Reb Eliezer declares them unclean as liquids. Reb Yeshua said the sages do not count the seven liquids as those who count spices, but they said that seven kinds of liquids are unclean and all the other liquids are clean. One may not turn dates into honey or apples into wine or winter grapes into vinegar, and no other fruit of truma or mythus sheni may be changed from its natural state, excepting only olives and grapes. One does not receive 40 lashes on account of orla, excepting for what issues from olives and grapes, and no liquid is brought from Bikurim except what issues from olives and grapes. And nothing is rendered unclean as a liquid except what issues forth from olives and grapes, and what does not offer up on the altar except what issues and one does not offer up on the altar except what issues from olives and grapes. Okay. And over here. Okay. Um, okay. We have Chumas.
Aleph
Uh,
beis.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Aleph
aleph
Beis.
beis.
Um, a deaf person who can speak but does not hear may not separate truma. But if he separated, his truma is truma. The cherish spoken of the sages is always one who can neither hear nor speak. Okay. Minor who has not produced two hairs, Rabbi Yehuda says his truma is truma. Rabbi Yossi says he has not reached the age of vows, his truma is not truma, and after he has reached the age of vows, his truma is truma. And one may not separate truma from olives for oil or from grapes for wine, but if one did separate, Beit Shammai says they are truma for themselves, but Beit Hillel says the truma is not truma. Okay. All right. And we are on to
Yeah.
Peah. Peah, okay. Reb Eliezer says land of the area of a quarter of is liable to pay. Rabbi Yehuda says that which produces satayim. Robert Tarfon says 6 to 6 tefachs. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bera says sufficient to reap and to reap. And the law is according to his opinion. Rabbi Akiva says land of any size is liable to pay and first fruits, and one can write on its account a prosbill and purchase with it property that has no security with money by a writ or by possession. If a mortally ill person assigns his property in writing and he left any land whatsoever, his gift is valid. If he did not leave any land at all, his gift is not valid. If a person assigns his property in writing to his sons and he assigned to his wife any plot of land, she has lost her ketubah. Rabbi Yossi says if she accepted, then even though he did not assign to her, she has lost her ketubah. Well, if a person assigns his property in writing to a slave, he goes out to a freed man. If he left any amount of land, he does not go out a freed man. If Shimon says he was always a free man, unless he says, "Behold, all my property is given to the person so and so, my slave, except for 1/10,000th of it." Okay, and well, it's Olios. Okay, Test Zion Aleph. All movable items convey tumor when they are fixed as a goy. Red Tarfon said, "May I bury my children if it is not a mistaken rule in which a listener heard and misunderstood." A farmer was once walking with his goat on his shoulder when one end formed an ohel over a grave. The sages declared him tame unless the utensils sheltered a corpse. Rebbe Akiva said, "I will amend the ruling so that the words of the sages remain valid. All movable objects convey tumor upon the person who carries them when they are thick as a goat." Thick as a goad, upon themselves, even if they are very thin, and another person or other utensils when they are a handbreadth wide. How so? If a spindle was embedded in a wall and there was a piece of corpse half the size of an olive beneath it and another piece half the size of an olive above it, even though they are not one above the other, the spindle is tummy. Thus it spreads tumor onto itself no matter what size it is. If a person who sells earthenware pots goes passing by a grave with a carrying pole on his shoulder, one end of which forms a roof over a grave, the utensils on the other end of the pole remain tahor. However, if the carrying pole is a handbreadth wide, the utensils become tameh. Mounds that are next either that are near either a town or a road are tameh, whether they are new or old. However, concerning the distant ones, those are new are tahor, where the old ones are tameh. What is meant by near? Within 50 cubits. And what is considered old? Any that are 60 years old. These are the words of Rameah. Rabbi Yehuda says, near means that no other is closer, and old means that no one remembers it. Someone who finds a corpse lying in its usual manner for the first time may remove it, along with the surrounding earth. Someone who finds two corpses may remove them along with the surrounding earth. Someone who finds three corpses that are between 4 and 8 cubits apart has located a district of graves. Once it has been determined to be a district of graves, he must search an additional area of 20 cubits. If he finds even one grave within 20 cubits, he must search for an additional 20 cubits. So this is a basis for concern. For if he had found only this grave initially, he would be required to take it along with the surrounding earth.
And that's
Okay.
it. Okay.
Yeah. Zora. Okay. Hey, Dalit. If one left his wine in a wagon or boat, and he went by a shortcut and entered the city and bathed, he is permitted. If he informed them that he was going far, it is prohibited. If there was time for him to puncture, patch, and allow it to dry. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says only if there was time for him to open, apply a new seal, and allow it to dry. If one leaves an idolater in a store, even though he goes in and out, it is permitted. If he informed him that he was going far, it is prohibited. If there was time for him to puncture, patch, and allow it to dry, Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says only if there was time for him to open, apply a new seal, and allow it to dry. If he was eating with him at the dining table and he left a flagon on the dining table and a flagon on the side table and he left him and went out, what is on the dining table is prohibited, but what is on the side table is permitted. But if he said to him, pour and drink, even what is on the side table, it's prohibited. Open barrels are prohibited, sealed barrels are prohibited only if there was a time that it takes to open, apply a new seal, and allow it to dry. If a troop of idolater soldiers entered the city in peacetime, open barrels are prohibited while sealed ones are permitted. In wartime, both are permitted because there is no time to perform libation. Jewish workers to whom an idolater sent a barrel of Nesek wine
Oh, well,
as
no,
their
no, that's it. That's it. We've done three.
what was it? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that's it.
Yeah, let me just put a mark here. I know. Let's see. Right.
Yes.
All right. And we are on to Yevamos. Yevamos. Okay. Dalit Hay. Dalit Ches. If one performed chalitza while with his yivamim, and then his brother married her sister and died, she requires chalitza but may not be taken in yibum. Similarly, if someone divorced his wife and then his brother married her sister and died, she is released from chalitza and from yibum. If a woman was waiting her yavam and his brother then betrothed her sister, it was said in the name of Rabbi Shua ben Sarah, will tell him, wait until your older sister brother acts. If his brother performed chalitza with her or married her, he may consummate the marriage with his wife. If the Yavama died, he may consummate the marriage with his wife. If the Yavam died, however, he must charge his wife with a bill of divorce, and his brother's wife gets chalitza. The Yavama may not perform chalitza or be taken in Yibum until 3 months had passed. Similarly, all other women may not be betrothed or married until 3 months have passed. Be they virgins or non-virgins, divorced or widowed, married or betrothed, Rabbi Yehuda says those who are married may be betrothed, and those who are betrothed may be married, except for those who are betrothed in Judea, because he is familiar with her. Rabbi Yehuda said, Rabbi Yossi says, all women may be betrothed except for the widow because of her mourning. If
Okay,
four
that's
brothers,
done. It.
that's it? Yeah,
Yeah,
oh,
we're done.
all right.